Hey, are you ready to get back to some in-person clinics? We're excited to bring you the Big Time Strength and Football Clinic, Saturday, March 27th in Mount Vernon, Iowa. This will be presented by One Mission, Powerlift, Team Builder, and Eastern Iowa FCA. We'll have 21 premier college and high school presenters, 10 strength coaches, 11 football coaches, over 8 hours of presentations with 3 rooms where you get a choice between 3 different speakers. We'll provide a clinic t-shirt as well as breakfast and lunch. This is going to be one of the best clinics in all of Iowa. Registration begins at 7:30. Presentations begin at 8 a.m. Cost will be $50 per individual or $100 for your entire staff. To guarantee a t-shirt, please register by March 14th. Walk-ups are welcome, but may not receive a t-shirt. We're excited to be back and meeting you in person again. Let's take a little bit of time to give some love to our sponsors. You know we have Team Builder. Thank you, Team Builder, for sponsoring today's episode. Team Builder is the leading software for high schools and colleges, and they provide coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. We've had a lot of great stuff come out of Team Builder. If you have not yet, check out their podcast. Hewitt always has some amazing tidbits, and it's just getting more and more fun to listen to each week. So right now, if you sign up with the code BIGTIME, you'll receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within Team Builder. No more spreadsheets, no more workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your program without outsourcing your programming with Team Builder. Next up, we have Powerlift. Powerlift is the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. Powerlift brings over 20 years of experience to the strength and conditioning world with all products manufactured in their state-of-the-art facility in Jefferson, Iowa. Powerlift is proud to support all coaches making it big time where they are at. For more information, make sure to reach out to Mike Richardson, and he'll make sure to take care of you. Hello, and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm your host for this week, with Amanda Berg, with episode number 123. We had a great conversation this week with Coach Wendi Irlbeck. Wendi is a devoted Christian, registered dietitian, certified International Society of Sports Nutritionist, writer, speaker, performance nutritionist, and a healthy lifestyle coach. She actually came on to talk with a class of mine, and the content was so good we said we need to provide this for our coaches as well. So she's going to have a great conversation with you regarding sports supplements. The ones we focused primarily on were creatine, protein supplements, and pre-workout supplements. So she had some wonderful information coming from science-backed, evidence-based research. Wendi utilizes evidence-based science to create nutrition programs so athletes can optimize performance, minimize health risks, and enhance recovery from training while focusing on injury prevention. She partners with parents, sports performance staff, special needs, and recreational athletes and organizations to eat and fuel for success. Wendi also works with the general population on healthy eating. In addition to lifestyle coaching, she makes her rounds presenting across the country and even in Canada. Wendi has presented at various conferences and clinics. To name a few, the University of Regina, Iowa in Canada, the University of Northwestern in Iowa, Northwestern State Clinic, Michigan State High School Strength and Conditioning Association Clinic. Wendi is a former college athlete with over a decade of experience in the health and fitness industry. She earned both her Bachelor of Science and Master of Science at the University of Wisconsin-Stout and has spent time learning with several professionals in the field, along with an internship at the University of Florida. Wendi operates her private practice virtually and remotely, but is based primarily in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She can be found at nutritionwithwendi.com. We hope you enjoy the show. All right, here we go. Welcome, Coach Irlbeck. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Coach. It's a real blessing to be here with you today.
Awesome. And yes, we are recording this for a class, but for just our community. And we thought that this information would just be so great to have. We have a class, and we do a video discussion each week called Hype, Healthy, or Harmful, where we bring in different types of fitness trends and nutrition stuff, and the students need to kind of decipher and weed through everything and form an opinion on it. So we brought you here today to help us. We've talked about a few things: creatine, creatine, protein, and pre-workout supplements. And we brought you here today just to help us follow up with the information we studied. So first thing I just wanted to ask you and to introduce, what is a registered dietitian?
That's a fantastic question. So, a registered dietitian is I have a slide. Would you like me to share that with you now for the
Yep,
illustrations?
sure, go
Okay,
ahead.
great. I'm going to go ahead and do that here then.
Yep.
Perfect. So it helps communicate. So a registered dietitian is very different from a nutritionist. So a registered dietitian has achieved a Bachelor of Science degree. They've completed coursework. They've also sat for at least, or completed 1,200 hours of supervised practice. And they've also sat for a board registration exam. So they've also changed the 2024 guidelines in which now they will have to complete a master's degree as well to be eligible for the RDN exam. So the big difference is that anyone can be a nutritionist, but not everyone can be a registered dietitian nutritionist. So there are many certifications, education that is involved with that. So Coach Berg, you can be a nutritionist because you can be self-proclaimed, right? In which you do
Yes.
not have to, have any of those credentials. So it's really about the credentials is the big difference.
Okay. And could you talk? I know you recently had another one certification related to sports nutrition. Can you talk about what that is?
Yes, absolutely. So that is through the International Society of Sports Nutrition. So that is a certification that highlights the understanding of physiology, metabolism, sports supplements, like creatine, caffeine, protein powder, and understands, the muscle physiology. So really highlighting the importance of, getting that knowledge from someone who is credentialed that has that expertise. So that's really what all of those credentials really mean. And the ISSN is a great one for those that are not going to per se work with the collegiate program. So if you're working in a private practice setting like I am, or if you're working, with even a hospital or clinic, it's a great certification. And the ISSN is a phenomenal organization that I encourage everyone to follow. Dr. Antonio too, he's a wealth of knowledge and shares a lot of great sports nutrition and health information.
Perfect. And it sounds like it sets us up for what we got going on today. So I'm going to get right into it. One of the first ones I want to talk about is protein supplements. So, from the research that my students did from this, overall, the class thought for teenagers, so 15 to 18-year-olds, they thought overall it was considered healthy. A few of them thought maybe there was hype just because there could be other additives into protein supplements, and maybe that you should use food as your primary source of nutrition. But in general, they were mostly healthy, just a little bit of hype. What do you think about it?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but I always defer to the science. First and foremost, I have some questions that I run through, why are you using the supplement? What's your desired goal? Are you eating breakfast? Are you eating real food? Are you drinking water? So I love how intuitive your students are in the sense of it can be healthy, but we need to further investigate what the use is for it. And that food first, of course, because we can't get the same amount of, leucine from the supplements that we would from whole food. So, for example, a chicken breast or fish or beef or steak. And supplements, right, as I kind of toggle between slides here, you can see this correctly.
Correct.
Okay, so supplement safety. So just getting back to the basics, first and foremost, we want to make sure that that supplement, in order for it to be safe, it needs to have a third-party test be undertaken. So Informed Choice or NSF approved. There's also an app for this. So you can look up any supplement to ensure that it does have what's on the label. But with our supplements, they're not as heavily regulated as our pharmaceuticals. So there is always that risk, right, that they could have some sort of contaminant. There could be something within them that again was not reflected upon the label, but that third party test does provide that due diligence that it is safe, it does not contain any contaminants or harmful levels of any of those banned substances. And there's over 270 plus, more now as we, every year goes past. But you want to make sure, and same thing, I have my supplements next to me here too, whether it's a multivitamin, the creatine monohydrate, that it has, again, that USP, NSF, or informed choice approved label. It'd be best if it had both for it to be safe, again, being third-party tested. So I can't stress that enough. And that's why I repeat myself with it, because it's so important. So going back to selecting one then too. So obviously foods first, whole foods first. And I talk about that in a few of the other slides. But when you're selecting a whey protein powder, you want to make sure it meets your goals. And that's where I ask, what are the goals that you have? Did you eat breakfast? How many training sessions are you going to be participating in, right? If you're doing 2-a-days, that's where the supplement is really necessary, because it would be really difficult, right, coach, to get in sufficient protein within a small period of time. And plus, if you have multiple training sessions, it's really difficult to eat multiple meals, especially if you're a youth athlete. So that's where that whey protein powder can be a supplement, right? Supplements are meant to supplement the gaps. So then I go back to this again, when selecting a whey protein, look at the safety, look at the ingredients, look at the carbohydrates. For it to be a recovery choice, right, too, we want to have some carbohydrates within it too. It can't just be whey protein. So whether it's BiPro or Gen UCAN, it also needs to, again, be something that tastes good, right, and can be tolerable, because, if you don't like the taste of it, you're not going to consume it, and then it won't do you any good. But getting very tangential with that, food first, but supplement second.
Okay. All right. That helps. And so with the certifications that are on there, in our setting, most of our students, probably their first form of any supplements probably come from like a retail place, a GNC or something like that. What percentage of supplements usually have these where they're, outside labs are also looking at them?
Oh boy, I don't know the exact percentage. That would be probably on the NSF's website. They
Okay.
have some of those specifics. I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out. I'll look it up for you.
Okay. But that would be just fun to know, because there's just so many, options right away.
There's
Okay.
a ton of options. I had in a slide, it's in a different presentation, but talking about, how many, with caffeine anyway, how many are more likely to use pre-workouts than protein powders. But that's a good statistic to look up. I don't know the
Okay.
answer to that.
All right. So, and then with a protein powder, would it be more beneficial before or after a workout?
It depends. Always going to say it depends. It depends on what you had for breakfast, what you had for lunch. I would say that according to the literature and research, it can only help you to have, there's research to support some protein and carbohydrate before strength training and after is supportive, but keeping in mind that it does not replace whole food. So it kind of gets, a little bit of gray. So I want to provide some clarity and always keep it simple. I would say to the typical youth athlete, high school student, I would say that it would help you, because most often you're not consuming enough at breakfast and
Yeah.
lunch. And so yeah, doing at least 15 grams of something could be really helpful. And then of course that 15 to 25 grams after the training session as well.
Okay. And one of the things that came up from the students was kidney issues. Is that a myth? Is anything related to kidneys and protein?
Yes, so that has been misquoted and taken out of context so much in the literature, and there's just so much information out there. So what I would say is that in healthy people that are not on dialysis, that don't have any kidney issues, there is no reported adverse effects. It does not harm your kidneys. It does not harm your bone mineral density. That is a huge misinformation that has been spread like wildfire. So Dr. Antonio with the ISSN has done many papers and videos on this. So go watch those videos. He talks about this specifically, and how in a healthy population, there is no adverse effects as far as our kidneys, our bones, or our liver.
Okay. So clarification, just like our students have to do, hype, healthy or harmful, protein supplements for a 15 to 18-year-old.
Healthy.
All right. All right. Let's Let's move on to our next one. And I got to be honest, this is one I think, especially as a female strength and conditioning coach in the high school world, hit me like a brick truck with students starting to use this supplement. And I did not have a background in it. I did not know the effects. I knew that it could be harmful, but I did not know how to communicate to them. So that is pre-workout powders. And I'm talking the ones, like some names would be like Woke AF, MV Pre, Total War, War Cry, and Edge of Insanity are some, like, asking the kids what they're using. And myself as an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, those are advertising straight to you. But I also did not have a background in it. So that's one of the ones that we focused on. And in general, when my students did hype, healthy, or harmful after the research, harmful was definitely the number one answer, with but, but it could help you get jacked, or, starting to get those big words. A little bit of hype that, it's okay to use, but it probably isn't going to be great for you, but mostly harmful. So what are your thoughts on pre-workout supplements?
Oh my word. Yes. That's all I can say at first. Whew. So hearing some of those are new ones. I haven't heard of some of those. A lot of the athletes I work with, it's like hide and jacked and explode, like these scary, I think of them as scary terms because I just think about our tissues. But first off the bat, I dislike them. I discourage them. I always say, if you're needing a pre-workout to go train, you're not sleeping enough, you're not eating enough regular meals, you're not taking care of your body in the appropriate way. And we build up a tolerance to those high levels of caffeine as well, and it stresses our heart. Obviously, I have many things to say. I'm 100% against them. I don't think that they have a place in the youth athlete's diet. Of course, there's research to support the benefits of caffeine. We know that it can, decrease pain tolerance, it can increase sprint performance, athletic performance. But that being said, that's for the adult population. And I have some background here on, caffeine and its effects and too much of it and what the actual recommendations are. So to those that are listening to this, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine per day. So if we look in terms of, I have a couple of slides all over the place here. If we look in terms of what the recommendations are, right? The bangs, the pre-workouts, those are 3 times the recommended amount by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So to me, right, that warrants significant concern, because if you have too much caffeine, it can lead to insomnia, hyperactivity, anxiety. And you talk about during a pandemic, we already are stressed and anxious. That exacerbates the situation. And then you have a loss of appetite, nausea, headaches, dizziness, increased, focus, but that does not override all those negative effects, right? So you get that increased focus for a minute and then it can drop. So that's where I say, if we're not consuming consistent meals with my athletes, I really provide and say, hey, you may think that this can make you a better athlete, but in turn, it can actually make you a less healthy athlete and a less healthy person, right? Student athlete first, and just providing that there's a lot of really scary stuff out there. And when you talk about all those pre-workout memes, where's my, like, food is a tool. So I go back to the eating and fueling. So if we're not covering the basics, optimizing, right, our controllables, which breakfast, hydration, sleep, all of those factors are controllables, a pre-workout has no place in the diet at all. So really want to empower my young athletes and to those listening and coaches out there to discourage the use of pre-workouts. A pre-workout should be a carbohydrate and protein. So there's no amount of supplements, right, that can replace good food, sleep, fluids, all of those things. And I would just say, if we go back to supplement safety, right, look at the check mark for approval on that pre-workout. Do you see it? Is the NSF certified sport label on there? Has it been third-party tested? Pretty unlikely that it has. And in fact, a lot of those pre-workouts have been recalled. Jack 3D was one of them. And again, we have had a lot of use. There's 15 to 17-year-olds that have had cardiac events. They've been in the hospital by consuming some of these things because it has a dangerous amount of caffeine in it. So long story, let's not use them. They are unhealthy. I would 100% discourage any athlete from using them. And in fact, throw them away, get rid of them if you do have them.
Okay. All right. And is there any out there that you would even have this NSF certified sport or informed choice label?
There's a few, and you can look it up. There's an NSF app. So if you look up the app, I know that Herbalife, they have a 24-hour line. They have one that has a NSF certified for sport approval, and then Clean, which
Okay.
is a supplement for creatine too. So this has the NSF. So I know that they have some pre-workouts, but I really don't talk about them at all. I provide that education. If you're going to use them, you have to be safe about it. Optimum has one that is NSF, but again, I would really discourage anyone under the age of 18 from using these because it's not going to help you in the long run. The habits that we're creating right now should be for health first and performance second.
All right. And as a coach, I think something that always scared me about this is most of our athletes that by the time they admit that this is something that they're using, a lot of it almost has what I would say like drug tendencies. Like, for instance, somebody older let them use it first, right? That's usually their first experience. They're, a ninth, 10th grade, and somebody else has it in the locker room who they look up to, who is bigger, right? They've grown a lot. And that's the part that just really gave me red flags with it, is just those behaviors are very similar to a lot of times how teens might choose drug use, you know.
Mhm. Vaping too. I love that you said that. One other thing to say, I mean, I always like to say I'll put myself, I was a youth athlete. I mean, I played a college sport too. One thing I'll say is that we didn't use caffeine. That stuff wasn't around when we were in school. I mean, I feel bad for a lot of kids, right? It's the marketing, the social media, it's always in their face. So I
Mhm.
definitely empathize with, our youth out there and even coaches too. I mean, we don't know what we don't know. So it's okay, don't feel guilty about these things, but knowledge is power. So having that knowledge and understanding that this can be harmful can help you make good decisions moving forward.
Wonderful. So I'm guessing this on this one, hype, healthy or harmful?
I'm gonna go with harmful.
All right. All right. Uh, oh, I think I'm going to back up and maybe one more thing with it that I've seen associated with pre workout BCAAs. Is there anything related to that and pre workout?
Yeah, so the branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those are so branched chain amino acids. There is position sandpapers within the isosen also that has indicated, right, that it can help, preserve lean mass. It can help support muscle protein synthesis, especially if you're doing any training in a fasted state, which I discourage any youth athlete from training in a fasted state. But a lot of those things too are, I would say, hype in my opinion. With some of the supplements extend, I mean, they do have the NSF certified sport label approved. Some of them are. They're hydrating. I always say that it's like drinking sugar-free Kool-Aid, right? They're
Okay.
they're hype. I would say that I wouldn't waste your money on that.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that up. Our recent focus has been a fun one because I think there's a big learning curve for students with this one. And they start out usually thinking one thing. And I think a lot of them really learned a lot and took it in with this one. And that was creatine use. And it's a name that, has been around for a long time. But that was the next one. And the students in general voted this one healthy, with, I'd even say a little bit, almost half thought that it was hype. Again, there was a little bit of talk about kidney use. There was some talk about uh, water with it, depending how much water you take, and changing the dose of it, and just being a little bit confused about the dosage related to creatine. So, yeah, I'd like you to talk a little bit about creatine for 15 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I have to say that, creatine monohydrate has been well studied very significantly since the 1928. He's a Frenchman. I can never say his name correctly, but it's one of the most widely studied ergogenic aids out there in the adult population. And not until the 1990s did we have a lot of, younger kids using it, but there's not a lot of research. And even the research we do have is pretty scant in comparison to the adult population. So creatine monohydrate is not a steroid, just the fundamentals. It does not harm your kidneys. It does not harm your bones. If anything, it can help you, again, because because if we look at the physiology of it and what it is, 95% of it is found in skeletal muscle. And the majority of creatine comes from our animal products, so the meat, fish, poultry. It is amino acids that, are derived from, the foods that we're consuming, and then we can create it as well. But just thinking in terms of glycine, methionine, and arginine. So those are amino acids, right? So they can't harm us, right? It can only help us because the goal with creatine is to increase our intramuscular creatine stores so that we can recycle ATP, which is the cell's energy currency, right? So we want that, especially if you're, an explosive athlete, you're training multiple times per day, maybe even someone too with traumatic brain injuries. There's research to support it from a clinical aspect too, neuroprotective effects, right? Because of that ability to recycle ATP, right, and recover. So I have created this slide here. So there is, a couple great researchers out there right now, Dr. Andrew Jegum and Chad Kursiak. Dr. Andrew Jegum is at the Mayo Clinic Hospital in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and he's doing a ton of collaboration with others within the ISSN and beyond on putting together some papers within the youth population, because there is research. And Dr. Antonio too, he has, his kids have been using creatine monohydrate. Now they're in their older teens, but several others as well, and they have not had any adverse effects. But according to the literature, there has not been any reported side effects in the youth population, and that's consistent. So as a practitioner, I would say creatine is very safe right now. It can help you, if anything, right, because of the physiology behind what it does. And so the International Journal Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism, this was a paper within soccer players and I shared this on Twitter the other day, that it was in male soccer players, but they were able to improve their vertical jump and their power output by using creatine versus the placebo group. So that says a lot to me, right? If there's no adverse effects and it can help you, and there's research, although it's minimal, but it is consistent that it can help improve performance, why wouldn't we be using it? So then we talk about the dosing. So this is, oops. I'm going to go back here. So talking about dosing, so there's the maintenance phase and the loading phase. So the research supports, again, it depends on too, if you're a vegetarian or you're consuming a lot of animal proteins, how much creatine you're really getting in your diet from the start. But that loading phase is 20 grams per day for 5 to 7 days. So, and then you have the maintenance phase once you've saturated the cells, right? And when you talk about water content, you want the cell essentially to swell. That's drawing it into, which is good, right? Just like carbohydrates, you draw water in, it causes the increase on the scale. That's a good thing. It's not fat gain. It's just that physiological response because you want that to occur because that's the mechanism of action. So I hope that addresses the water intake as well when people talk about, the scale going up, and then also addressing the fact that you need to consume, at least 20 to 25 ounces of fluid with it. And it's best taken with a carbohydrate because insulin helps draw the creatine into the cell. So that's really important too. So here's the protocol of use, great infograph, and you can see that's the loading phase versus the maintenance phase. So this also can be achieved again when we go back to it depends. If you're somebody that is consuming significant amount of animal sources, you may not need to do that 20 grams. You could do, 10 to 15. It really becomes an individualized thing at that point. But this is the protocol per some of the experts out there. And oops. I'm going to go back here. So just talking about the fact that, we want to make sure it has the NSF certified sport label on there, right? If we choose to use creatine monohydrate, NOW Now Sports, they also have one available, and it provides the dosing on there, right? That 3 to 5 grams per day after you've done the loading phase. So I kind of just burned through a lot there. What questions do you have?
Well, I just want to come back to what I took from that. Just for students, I think that would be an important part. So 5 to 7, if we're going to use creatine, 5 to 7 days at the beginning, 20 grams, and then after that, 3 to 5 grams a day. And so for a high school athlete, we'll even talk about a lot of them are multi-sport athletes. Do they need to restart this process ever, or when they're taking it, can they continue that dosage until they maybe take a break from it or don't use it anymore?
Yeah, so the washout period, I mean, depending upon, again, there's so many factors, how long they've been using it. I mean, if they're brand new to it, I would say let's stick with the loading phase here. Let's do that for 5 to 7 days, and then we will transition to the maintenance phase of 3 to 5 grams after a resistance training session.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about timing before a workout, after a workout, at night?
Yeah, so it is best that is best absorbed and utilized after resistance training, just because of that muscle protein breakdown, right? You want to mitigate the risk of that occurring, and then also to support the recovery process, and then also, preserving lean mass. It's best post training within 30 minutes. So if you can get in that 3 to 5 grams with a carbohydrate source, right? Because you want that creatine uptake to be increased, and then protein. So that's why I always say the best thing to do is mix that in some Greek yogurt, your creatine, that is, mix your creatine in some Greek yogurt or within your chocolate milk and a banana. And that's really going to be the best way to absorb that and, experience the best effects from a performance injury reduction standpoint. And then also preparing for that next training session, right? Because recovery is a 24-hour process.
Okay. Wow. A lot with that one. But so bottom line with creatine, hype, healthy or harmful?
Healthy.
All right. Yes, and just kind of debunking the myths with it. And I like that you said at the beginning that it's not a steroid. I actually have a story. I was just with a strength and conditioning coach, and she was telling me about an athlete who reached out to her and said, Coach, I'm thinking of starting to do steroids. And she's like, well, and he had just started, a 10th grader. He had just started training. She's like, well, she did all this research to get to show him all this stuff. And then after she showed him, he said, so the stuff in the store that isn't good for me to use, he had been talking about using supplements and, and just the confusion. So to a kid, this was steroids. So so there is a lot, out there, and to a kid, they hear steroids is bad, but it's sometimes as coaches we forget how they categorize steroids. So I know, excellent. Couple follow-up questions with this, and something that I've recently been seeing is like a drink, what I would assume would be an energy drink, and I mean I know the Bang is one of them. Now you see it in a grocery store, and then it's advertising creatine. So what is the deal with that? Energy drink and creatine the same time? It just seems like it would conflict.
Yeah, so that's marketing at its finest too. And then keeping in mind, yes, a lot to unpack there. I just want to go back to some of the stuff you're talking about with your friend and the steroid too, asking this for kids. It does blow my mind that parents and so many people are against creatine use, but they're giving their kids these detox supplements and pre-workouts and everything else under the sun, but we're so against creatine when it's a very healthy, safe thing. So I just want to provide that context. If there's any, health professionals listening to this that are misunderstanding of what creatine really is, I would really just, discourage you from, saying that the steroid. It has steroid-like properties because it's so amazing that it can help, right, with recovery and reducing risk of injury and supporting mass and what a steroid. So I just want to say that I want more people to use creatine monohydrate, especially our youth population. All of my athletes use it because again, we're monitoring what they're doing. And I really want to take this opportunity to say that it is not going to harm you. It is only going to help you. So that being said, I will move on to the Bang. So addressing the Bang, going back to this. So what's really interesting, Coach, is that I did a little bit of research. So over 40% of American teens had consumed an energy drink in the past 3 months. This was a survey that was given, and this was in 2018. And then also, if we look at how many kids are being hospitalized because of the ridiculous amount of caffeine that's within them, it's 300 milligrams, right? And that's really scary because if we know we're not supposed to consume more than the recommended 100 milligrams by the American Academy of Pediatrics, that should say right away, like, hold up here, caution, challenge flag. We shouldn't be using this. The creatine and the caffeine aspect, that's truly a marketing thing that let's put these things together. Everything is marketed that caffeine can help you and it can make you better and more focused, and you throw in creatine too, you're getting maximal benefits. What I would say is that the creatine's great, but the caffeine is not. And then there's amino acids even in there as well, and then a bunch of artificial sweeteners. And I've even had athletes that have told me they've used these items and they had significant gut pain. They had headaches and they felt horrible during their training sessions. So it's not a good thing to use if you're, a young athlete and you're looking to consider using one of these things because you heard that it can help you with focus and cognition and performance. I will say in the adult population, there's research, there's even a position stand paper on Bang. So please don't misunderstand that with the youth population. So I just want to say context is key here. In the youth athletes, this is not something that should be used. Adults, that's a whole different story for a whole nother different podcast, but youth athletes, don't use this. It's going to hurt you. I'm very discouraging against using these Bang energy drinks.
Okay. And does it have creatine in it? Like, how can they advertise that part?
Yeah, I could create a supplement in my garage and then throw it on the market next week because the FDA, although they regulate supplements as I had shared, but they're not as heavily regulated as our pharmaceutical. So they can put the creatine in there, but it may not contain creatine. It can just contain dextrose and a bunch of other artificial sweeteners and chemicals, right? So we don't even know 100% what's in there, right? Because if we go back to what we learned today about, USP, the informed choice, NSF certified, do you see that label on the Bang energy drinks?
Never.
Right. So it has not been third party tested. So I would discourage, right, against using that 100%.
Okay. Wow. So much information today. I'm glad that you let us record this so we can just, unravel and take it in. Our focus today has been on supplements, but I do have to say, Coach Irlbeck, you do such a good job of putting great information out there about food first and what types of foods that we should be using. I think that's important to go into that, and that could be a whole nother section that we do sometime. But this has been great, and as strength coaches, or coaches in general, we just need to be cognizant that our athletes are seeing this stuff all of the time, and the information that is coming into them is just so mumbled. So I see you have a slide up here. If there's
I'm playing around with slides, sorry.
That's okay. Related to nutrition, can you take a little bit at the end here? What is the number one advice you have right now for our teenagers, 15 to 18-year-olds who are competitive or just in general growing and training?
Yes, 15 to 18-year-olds, eat breakfast, all meals matter, drink water, focus on prioritizing your sleep, put away those electronic devices so that you can get the 7 to 9 restful hours you need at a minimum. I would say 9 to 11 would be best, especially if you're training at a high level, you're looking to play at the collegiate level. You're at that critical age right now where you are growing and developing your tissues, your bones, maturation. That requires a lot of calories, a lot of nutrition to support those metabolic processes. So prioritize food first. Consume a balanced plate. That's what I have up here. This is a USOC's Olympic training plate. Again, that size and frequency of the plate will change with, regards to training and, weight gain, weight loss, etc. But this is fundamentally the number one most important thing that any 15 to 18-year-old could do is eat real food, focus on lean protein, whole grains, fruits, vegetables. A colorful plate is a healthy plate, food first, and be safe and be consistent. That's the biggest thing, is that, we can't just expect to eat a couple of good meals and just say, okay, I'm set. I don't need to eat, a pre-workout meal. And when I say pre-workout, right, I'm talking protein and carbohydrate. So a Greek yogurt parfait, things like that. Those are really the training modalities, right? Nutrition modalities that I focus on that support the growth, development, maturation, and then also reinforce the performance adaptations, supporting recovery, and then overall long-term development, right? The habits that we develop in our youth, that 15 to 18-year-old population, you carry those into adulthood. So you want to be healthy first, right? Because you may not always be an athlete. So we want to think in terms of how can I best support myself for long-term success? And that's giving my brain and body what it needs. And that's real food.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And for our coaches out there, what would be a big piece of advice that maybe they should be saying? It's not something that's brought up a lot related to nutrition. Is there something specific that you could advise them, maybe related to food or eating before a competition? I'm throwing that one at you, but
Oh, that's great. What I would say is keep it simple, of course, just reinforce those good habits. And I would always say too, encourage them to be honest with you, because we don't know what we don't know. So they could think, you 15 to your 8-year-olds listening to this, that it's healthy and maybe they wouldn't even tell the coach about it. But I
Mhm.
would say if you're a coach, ask questions, hey, what did you eat for breakfast? What did you eat for lunch? What did you eat before you came into the weight room? So it opens up that discussion of, hey, they want to encourage you to get better. They're not there to, penalize you or frown upon you and what you're doing, but just to help you, so that we can have that opportunity for improvement and get in more nutrition before that training session. Because then everybody wins, right? Then athletes are coming in more energetic, more eager to be there, and everybody just wins at that point.
Wow, amazing. And I see you have it up. My next question that I'm planning to ask you is great stuff today. If people want a little bit more or just to follow you on social media, where can we find you?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me, Coach. And I appreciate all the great questions and the opportunity to discuss something that, is kind of a taboo topic, supplements and youth athletes. But what I would say, you do such a great job with your class and this podcast too, talking about what's healthy and what's hype and, context matters. So thank you so much for having me. I think you're doing great things and I'm just very grateful to contribute. And if people want to follow me, they can check me out on Twitter. Wendi Irlbeck is my handle, and then Nutrition with Wendi, and then also my website, nutritionwithwendi.com. I have recipes and I have significant blogs on there, reiterating how to fuel, whether it be carbohydrate or protein recommendations. So if you're a strength coach, I even have blogs out there for you. I even have blogs out there for parents that are trying to get in more protein, more vegetables in their kids, and doing that from a practical standpoint. I'm big on basics, so feel free to go follow me, and just thank you so much for having me today.
Excellent. Yes, and I can contest to that. Your social media graphics are just they speak to a teenage brain. They really do. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you again for joining us. And we have my special guest with my class today. Class, thank you for coming on today and the research that you did leading up to this cumulative activity that we are doing today. So wonderful. Thank you, Coach. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you too. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.